Welcome to the Savvy Scoop podcast, where we delve into the dynamic intersection of law, business, and technology. I'm your host, Doug Stryker. This episode is brought to you by Savvy Training Consulting, your partner in modernizing legal systems and empowering teams. Learn more at savvytraining.com. I'm excited to welcome my friend and colleague Dan Visscher to the podcast. Dan serves as the Director of Finance and Operations at Kreis Enderle, a Michigan-based law firm, starting his career at the firm at just 18 as a part-time courier. Dan has progressed through various roles, including accounts payable assistant, payroll manager, and assistant controller before assuming his current position as the firm's first Director of Finance and Operations. His comprehensive experience provides Dan with a unique perspective on the business side of legal practice. In 2022, Dan earned the Certified Legal Manager, the CLM credential, distinguishing him as one of only two individuals in Michigan to hold this title. His commitment to excellence was further recognized when he was named one of Michigan Lawyer Weekly's Unsung Legal Heroes in 2022. Additionally, Dan has been elected as the 2025-26 president of the West Michigan chapter of the Association of Legal Administrators, reflecting his leadership within the legal community. Dan, welcome to the Savvy Scoop. It is a pleasure to have you here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Doug. It's fun to hear that bio. It's like, oh man, I guess I have been busy these last several years. So
you've done a few things in your budding career.
Yeah, no, appreciate that.
So Dan, your journey at Kreis Enderle is quite inspiring. Starting as a part-time courier and now leading finance and operations. How did you get here, and what motivated you to stay on this path?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think back to when I was 18, which the internal joke is I started when I was 12, based on how I still look today. But yeah, no, when I was 18, I was attending Western Michigan University, where I graduated with a finance degree, and just looking for that part-time job, paying my way through college. And lucky enough, the firm offered me a full-time position in their accounting department. And what kind of kept me going down this path, because I always think back to pursuing finance. I was kind of going a whole different direction than the legal industry. But what kind of kept on pulling me in is, I think, really the mentorship and the leadership that was and still is at my current firm. They kind of realized what I could bring to the table, and wanted to continue to invest in me, which I very much appreciate, very much to today. And so they were looking at how I could help the firm, help evolve the firm, and adapt to different situations. And I think, it's a two-way street too, because not only did I have that good mentorship and leadership, but I myself was wanting to kind of push the envelope, so to speak, which, can be very hard in a law firm with a bunch of attorneys and different perspectives and personalities. But, I wanted to see what I could do, and wanted to kind of put myself in different situations and expand my experience. And ultimately, I think back to my own personal road of my family background dynamics, and kind of what my parents kind of invested into me and into my personality and background and education and discipline. I wanted to I enjoy the quarterbacking aspect, and seeing what levers could be pulled in different directions, and seeing what could evolve the organization forward. So yeah, I've definitely enjoyed these last, I guess, I don't know, 16 years. It seems like it's been a blink of an eye.
My, how time flies.
Yeah.
Do you think, so, at 18, clearly do you think that someone at the firm saw something in you that you may not have seen in yourself, and you were the diamond in the rough? And from a cultural standpoint, or the firm standpoint, how do you take that nugget and find people who were similar in a similar position as you then and guide them up through the firm. And now I assume you're a mentor to others in the firm.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think I was mentioning this to someone else the other day. Like I'm the director of finance and operations. So you think, oh, he's a numbers guy, but really, I'm a people person now. That's not my. Inherently more introverted, but over time, I think I've grown into more of that leadership role and engaging with people. And ultimately, my task is finding the strengths in others and putting them into position for success, because that will translate into success for the firm and for the team to move forward. And so that's very much what it was when I was 18 in those early years. My predecessor, Mike Beam, who was the controller at the time, we just kind of really hit it off in those early years from a mentor-mentee perspective. He saw potential in me, and he sowed a lot of just experience that he's had over the years in his long career. And I was grateful to be that benefactor of that knowledge transfer. And he also encouraged me to pursue further education and join the ALA, and to pursue my CLM. He is now retired from the firm, and he spent over 20 years at the firm. And so the background that he provided to me and the experience was just very impactful for me and my growth. But now, because I've had that experience, to your point, Doug, I can be that mentor to others and engage others and hopefully elevate them into positions where they can make change and they can make a difference. Because that's another aspect of all this, is that everyone on the team, what they do matters, and it impacts the firm, it impacts the clients that receive those legal services. So it's just kind of reinforcing that mindset, and helping others along that path.
And as a director of the firm, as a C-level employee, you've learned over the years you've been taught and learned how to manage attorneys and steer the conversation in a business direction that you want it to go, that you see as the future of the firm. And I've been there as well. And I think we both have the scars to prove it. But how do you build consensus in the firm, with the, and I hate the word non-lawyer, but with the professional staff of the firm, and then encourage the attorneys to make the right decision, which is the one that you want them to make? How do you get them to do what you want to do?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's been quite the process, I think, to learn that landscape, I guess, in the industry. And I think it's more so unique in the legal industry than I through the chapter association, we have professionals that come in from different, healthcare and other settings, manufacturing. It is a whole different animal in the legal industry. And but it's, yeah, your work, human to human interaction, kind of understanding both sides and having that perspective, where I view things, and where they might view things in their background. It kind of gets into the psyche of everyone individually and what they bring to the table. But I think you have to be comfortable with the aspect of you're not always gonna win, first and foremost. And to your point of scars, sometimes you're gonna crash and burn a couple of times. That's part of the learning process. So I think having those expectations is very important. In order to get the buy-in, I think is just you have to be willing to put in the time and effort, and showing the attorneys, based on what you say and putting that into action, and seeing that outcome. Over time, they'll start to kind of understand that, okay, what Dan is saying or what Doug is saying, it makes sense. I can understand what he's saying. He's proven himself in the prior years or prior initiatives and projects. We can kind of get behind that now, and just being very thorough when you get to the point of recommending different initiatives. I mean, they're attorneys, so they're professionals in dissecting everything, and being, potentially, more risk adverse. They're very, and what they go through the process of their own clients and matters. So, come prepared to have that dialogue, not only just on the paper, but also in conversation. You got to be able to kind of spin on a dime and be able to respond effectively. So,
I was once told that in order to get what I wanted, I needed to prove that whatever it was reasonable, important, and easy. And if it
mhm.
met that those three criteria, then more likely than not, I would get what I wanted.
Yeah.
Dan, what are a few, one or two initiatives that you've proposed recently that were successful?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, there's two that come to mind, and they're pretty pressing to today's world. So one is AI, and so we back in 2023 when ChatGPT came on the rise, we had to kind of push out an initial policy on don't use ChatGPT,
Stay
especially
away.
you
Don't
stay
touch it.
away, stay far away. AI is the worst. But we've grown from that, obviously, and understanding, we get, all these new technologies are coming out. You kind of have to take a step back and kind of analyze and evaluate and make sure that it makes sense for you and for your firm specifically. And obviously AI has grown since 2023, and so we launched with Lexis AI last year,
Oh,
so
good.
focusing on more of the attorney side of the coin. How can we start kind of diving into it from a safety net perspective of being within the Lexis library versus something like ChatGPT or Copilot. Um, so we have done that, and I will say, for the most part, I've gotten very, very positive feedback, and it really comes down to, and Doug, you and I have talked about this over the years, that you can have the technology, but then, it could just kind of fall flat in space right there. I mean, you got to have the people, the process, the technology all wrapped together, connected to your strategic plan, your vision, your goals, and kind of keep beating that drum, so to speak. And so, we do routinely we do routine training sessions for our attorneys to make sure that they know how to use it correctly and efficiently. And so we've gotten some buy-in, some from some pockets and some practice areas. And we're just kind of looking to routinely kind of expand on that, especially as we bring in new attorneys into the mix. But also as it relates to that, like, and I was mentioning to Doug before we started, the conference that I just went to, the annual conference, talked about AI quite a bit, and really kind of expanding into not just thinking about the attorneys, but what about my staff? What about my
Right.
C-suite? Like, how can they leverage this tool effectively and efficiently, that can help us, propel forward in terms of being able to respond quickly, not only from a front office perspective for clients, but also our internal client service to our attorneys and staff from an admin perspective. Like, can we be more efficient in that respect if we had a tool, a process, and align that with the people? And so we're actively looking into that right now. I mean, I think most of us that are probably watching the podcast use Microsoft, so Copilot is just there. It's that scary little icon with the colors on it. Like, what do I do with this guy?
Yeah.
And so personally, I've been a little bit more used to Chat GPT. And so I pay, individually, my own subscription with Chat GPT and gotten used to that. But so I'm going to start diving into Copilot, which shouldn't be too much of a learning curve from that perspective. But it's kind of informing others in your team on how to leverage that. And again, how that all kind of ties into uh, helping the firm propel forward from that mindset. Um, the other item that we're looking at, an active initiative, is a future client management system. And so that also kind of dovetails back into AI quite a bit, as we're looking at technology, looking at that strategic plan of that, what kind of innovations that we're trying to push forward that will better service our clients. So our client management system is one of those aspects. And so our current system is good. but we're just kind of looking to launch into that next level and being able to provide those additional services to the client to provide that better value to them. And so we're just looking at those little technology aspects to help us be more efficient with our time. And because it is just this day and age, is the society that we live in, for better or for worse, there's higher expectations from a timing standpoint, a 24/7 standpoint. We want things like yesterday, and so we just have to be prepared to meet those expectations, but also be able to communicate clearly on those expectations. So it's a big year this year and going into next year for us for the collective of the firm. So exciting too.
It is exciting. I mean, I use Chat GPT every day. Where do you think I got the script for this podcast?
Exactly.
What do you think about that? This has been on my mind for a while. As us and law firms, as training companies, whatever, inside of the operation, we are learning how to leverage AI tools better, more effectively, with the right guardrails and all of that. I'm also of the mindset that almost every client of a law firm is using AI, and maybe that's sometimes why they need to call the lawyer, right?
Mhm.
The old joke is that you don't call a lawyer when you're having a good day. But do you think that the clients of the firm are using AI tools to help them be efficient, or are using them and they get in trouble, and therefore they need their lawyers to have an in-depth knowledge of these tools to help get them out of trouble?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it depends on the practice area, but I do hear that routinely, that it's creating more business because certain clients are using AI ineffectively and running into issues, and then our attorneys are having to unpack that and spend even more time to correct. I think specifically in our estate planning practice area, because yeah, you think, me as an individual, oh, it should be pretty easy to use Chat GPT. I need a will, I need, all these things. But then that's where um, learning how to use a tool. I kind of think back to, like, back in grade school when you're the whole calculator, like you first learn how to do multiplication, division, and all the things, and then you're given the calculator. That's kind of in a very simplistic, way of thinking. That's kind of how AI is too. It's another tool in the tool belt, but you need to learn how to do those things before you just go to the tool, because otherwise, whatever it kind of generates for you in terms of a response, um, for the most part, it is, I think, pretty accurate, but you want to have the experience to be able to decipher and make sure that it is, accurate before you sign off on it, especially as an attorney, and sending it out the door, and have that representation there. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely an impact that we're seeing on, clients starting to kind of dabble in it, getting into it. I think more so it's causing more harm than good, but I think it also depends on the practice area, and who is using it in terms of their own experience level and knowledge. But that's why we kind of rely on our senior attorneys and experience to be able to decipher and make sure that they know what the correct legal response is to that situation.
I love that analogy of learning how to do the math first and then you get the calculator. And I
Yeah.
think that resonates for me. And of course, now I can't do anything without my calculator, which is on my phone, which is always with me. So, maybe
Yeah.
at some point, we will simply live in an AI world. Let me
Mhm.
ask you this: with all the tools in AI, one of the most basic ones is taking meeting notes and creating transcripts. Is that a
Yeah.
tool that you're using in the firm, that the lawyers are using with clients and client meetings? Like, what's one piece of AI efficiency that is palpable that you're doing right now?
Yeah. Yeah. So beyond, we have started looking into that. We haven't launched that yet. I think that would be very helpful for us. Beyond the legal research AI, from an attorney perspective, and the document prep on that. And I do hear routinely from the attorneys that, oh, I mean, this used to take me 2, 3 hours, and now it only takes me like 20 minutes. I think having the ability to do those summaries, is very helpful on their end. And I think also from an admin side, I like you, Doug, I try to use it. I try to remind myself, hey, I have my own personal assistant. Use ChatGPT. And I think I've been trying to encourage some of my fellow C-suite individuals, my HR manager, in HR especially, a lot of communications, a lot of policy drafting. It's like, instead of spending 2, 3, 4 hours developing this from scratch,
Yeah.
here you go. And now it gets you, 80%, 90% of the way. Then you can kind of finesse it and kind of curtail it to how it should be for the firm specifically. That's huge because as we all know, there's other irons in the fire. We need to address, recruitment. We need to address, just internal items and initiatives. So if you can find ways to free up 3, 4, 5 hours, that's a multiplier for sure.
Translates to real money.
Yeah. So in terms of other areas we're trying to, and that's kind of where I was kind of going with looking at our staff levels and trying to put the pressure on our practice groups saying, hey, we have this tool. Let's look at ourselves in terms of how we conduct certain processes, certain tasks, and can we insert this tool to automate that? And that goes back to the client management system too, because they're also looking, I'm looking at a future management system that's going to play nice with AI in the years to come, because as we all know, it's going to continue to evolve. And so what areas can we continue to look at that will have those AI automation workflow aspects that will continue to evaluate how we do certain tasks and certain practice groups and just automate that completely. So
With all these tools coming out, I guess this is a multi-layered question. How do you decide what tool you want to invest in? What tool is going to be here 5 years from now? And how does that change or alter how you educate your staff and attorneys on how to use new said tool? Does the training look differently? How much time does it take? Does the training itself become more efficient? How does that look like for you?
yeah. No, and that's a real thing because I feel like we're getting just overloaded with just so much information, so much new technology, and there's just this underlying feeling of, oh, I'm always behind or we need to catch up, the competition is doing this and that. And so I think it just kind of goes back to, again, go back to your strategic plan, what's your overall vision? And I think, what we try to do is we just every year we prioritize, all right, this is going to be our focus this year, and we're just going to focus on that. Because if you try to do everything, you're just going to get burned out and nothing's going to happen.
Right.
So, I think of like I hear the interstate in the background. I think of the flow of cars coming on the highway.
Yeah.
They're constantly going to be coming, and then you're having to manage and pull levers and control like the exit ramps and how much is flowing to that exit ramp, and are you going to get backlogged or is there an accident or what have you? And it's just kind of always being in that mindset of just adapting to the situations, being fluid enough, but then going back to your structured strategic plan to saying, okay, are we still on track? Are we still, having our meetings? Are we having our action plan? Are we meeting our deadlines? Because yeah, this technology wave is going to continue to come. The evolution there is going to continue to come for the legal industry, and it's just, especially ever since COVID, it's just been a constant stage of just change. And we're just, having to be very nimble and being very fluid and adaptable. And I think that this kind of goes back to the strategic plan, but also constant communication. You have to have, I guess, going back to the interstate conversation, you have to have drivers behind those initiatives. Like I either myself in my role, in conjunction with the leadership team, we have to keep on the communication, keep reminding all levels that, this is the goal, this is the vision, this is what we're trying to achieve, and this is the why behind it all. And then at the very early part of our conversations, we talked about finding other people on your team and their strengths. And so then it's kind of trying to elevate them to drive certain initiatives. And that's how you start to really scale the business is you get the right, systems, people, processes in place. You have a sound vision goal for the future, and you're just, constantly trying to elevate others around you, and that just elevates the firm collectively. So, I mean, it's not going to be easy. And like I said, a lot of crash and burn examples throughout the years, and there will continue to be. Not everything I think of is the right answer, but it's just that constant effort to push forward. And some days, weeks, months, years, you feel like you're not making any progress, but 2 years later, 3 years later, all of a sudden, boom, you just went a whole another milestone. So yeah, it's definitely exciting to see how this industry has, just stereotypically been always kind of the last to adapt, but it's rapidly adapting just in the last few years. So it's pretty cool to see.
It's rapidly evolving and it's slightly erratic as well. I love that
Yeah.
also analogy of the freeway. And do you think, in terms of some of the challenges of deciding what tools to use and when, is it more a factor of the amount of traffic on the highway or the speed limit or the drivers,
Mhm.
right? Like, and so what are the challenges you
Yeah.
see? You're electing to move on a client relationship software that's somehow AI powered. Lex is, of course. Um, what do you? How do you manage the flow of traffic, and
Yeah.
how do you steer that? And out of all the tools that are out there, how do you decide in your strategic plan that these are the three initiatives we want to do in 2025?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's somewhat timing. We're seeing that we've made some moves in some these last 5 years, both from a physical sense, our office move. We've also recruited some new talent, and we're also in the midst of that succession planning. So still in conjunction with the strategic plan, as it relates to succession planning, we're getting that new generation of leadership coming into the ranks. And the what becomes more important or what's the priority changes and evolves. And so, like your reference to the drivers, I think you're always having to be mindful of like, all right, Dan Visscher, I want the best of the best, but does that really make sense with the drivers that I have and kind of marrying the two? And so, but you always have that future mindset in mind to where well, it's going to make sense not only today, but 5 years from now and 10 years from now. Because especially for a client management system, the hope and desire is it's going to be your platform for at least 10 years, or
Yeah.
maybe 10 years. Um, and so, I'm wanting to have a system that's going to be future, thinking of the future and what technologies are coming down the road. And how that aligns with my next generation of attorneys, staff, and that leadership. All those changes are kind of coming into place, and so it's just kind of trying to marry the two, and kind of articulate to them, and to the firm at large, that communication piece of the why behind it all and why this is such a good decision for the firm as a whole, because of the efficiencies and because of these efficiencies, we're avoiding future challenges and roadblocks. So,
In terms of thinking about, that's great. In terms of thinking about, what incentivizes or motivates your employees. You've been a partner with Savvy Training for multiple years now, and you were one of the first ones who created a certification program at Kreis Enderle,
mhm.
using the LMS. How do you continue to inspire motivation for your employees in order to continue their own education and their own desire to learn new things?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you really kind of have to carve it out into groups. I mean, obviously, incentivizing shareholders is one thing,
Yeah.
incentivizing associates or incentivizing staff are different as well. So, from a staff level, and emphasizing the learning and aspect, I think it's kind of again, I think as at large, it's still reminding everyone of the why behind it all. But in that group specifically, I think it's the recognition It's the if you achieve this, then this type aspect that we want to try and grow. It's almost we're kind of in the midst of trying to restructure and elevate from a vertical structure standpoint. So instead of just coming in at just this level of a legal assistant, there's going to be different levels. And because if you achieve certain things, either through experience and through education and just through your own performance and initiative, you will elevate within the firm structure. And there's obviously, rewards along the way. And so that's also part of, again, going back to the strategic plan of just trying the vision of just how things are structured from a workflow standpoint and from a hierarchy standpoint, and just trying to elevate those as we identify those strong employees that are future leaders of the firm or for the practice groups. You want to try to incentivize those individuals and not just, because they're going to feel like, well, what I'm doing doesn't really make a difference, and I could do that, education, but what does that do for me, type mindset. And so it's kind of trying to read into that psyche. And I think also the generation mindset from an overall perspective is shifting, is changing. And they want to feel like they're a part of something bigger than just, this is my 8 to 5 job and see you later.
But I not only do I get the sense, but I know that you and the team have really created intentional culture at the firm, and I think it shows in everything that I see. Social media wise, I see you guys on LinkedIn and everywhere else, and like there's a lot of positive, recognition of employees, of staff, of attorneys, of presentations, conferences, all of that. For thinking about, this is an odd question, Dan, but thinking about succession planning, if you were to coach a younger you or the next you, what are a couple key things that you wish you would have known then that you now want to teach to a new director of finance and operations?
Yeah. I think it's always trying to have the mindset to think outside the box. I think it's, when you're coming into it, at least from my angle, and I think it's mainly, I guess maybe somewhat from a negative side, is I've only known legal industry. So maybe if you were in a different industry, maybe you were coming in, you would think differently and provide different potential solutions to the table. So from my ascension, I was, I've grown up here. So I've only known the legal aspect, and traditionally we do things X, Y, and Z. So I think the mindset of just think outside the box, propose new ideas, new concepts, new structures, I think is very important. Obviously, you always have to have the thick skin of you might have shareholders looking at you saying, "What the heck are you talking about? Are you crazy?"
Yeah, been
But
there.
that's okay. I think it's healthy to have that perspective, to challenge the shareholders on certain things, and to have them think outside the box with you, and then you just prepare your case, and why it would be impactful. And I think coupling that mindset with connecting and networking as early on as possible within your legal industry. So I think it's been imperative in my ascension to my role how involved I've gotten with my local chapter and the National ALA Association. The amount of resources is just so valuable. You think it's pretty daunting, like, oh, I'm gonna have to recreate the wheel here. But no, I mean, there's so many. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, there was over like 2,000 members from our association at the annual conference. Just think of like all the different geographical areas across the country, even internationally, and you kind of hear all the similar challenges that every administrator is facing. And you just kind of pick up some nuggets of information, ideas, or even business partners to reach out to because they have this new tool that could solve your potential issue. I think, yeah, just having an open mindset and networking with those individuals within the industry would be my feedback there. So
Yeah, and to our listeners who may not know, but for a long time, I was also a member of the ALA. I was never the president, incoming president, like Dan is, but from the perspective of a peer group, it just can't be beat. When I came into my firm, I didn't know anything, and but for that peer group who helped me avoid issues or problems that I was certainly going to make. It was a saving grace in so many ways. And you're right, Dan. Learning, how to network and how to volunteer and how to be a part of a bigger organization with different perspectives, different size firms, different issues. I think fundamentally, law firms are unique in the sense that most of the operational staff wants everyone else to succeed. And that's where the ALA is really uplifting for its entire membership and the business partners who come to it with really interesting ideas and businesses and potential relationships.
well, I mean that's how you and I got connected all those
Yeah.
years ago. Was from a peer within our chapter, and because I was trying to think about how do we put all of our standard operating procedures together, and how do we provide some more training for our staff and for attorneys. And yeah, there was a peer who said, oh yeah, check out Savvy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here we are like 6 years later.
Oh
So
my goodness. I can't
yeah,
believe
crazy.
that. All right. Well, we are at about time. I got one last question and then I'll wrap it up. Dan, if you could complete this sentence. The future of law firm operations will be defined by.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good one. Will be defined by, I guess, how well the people within the organization adapt to the technology of the day.
That could not be a more perfect answer.
Hmm. Yeah.
Well done. All right. Well, Dan, thank you for sharing your insights and experiences, and your journey to this point has been amazing. And I'm just lucky to have you as a colleague. And I look forward to your leadership at the firm and your leadership next year, later this year, in the ALA. And I appreciate the time that we've had together on this podcast journey as well.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate that. Thanks for having me.